Hey, so there's this shell of an idea in my mind. I kind of call it dynamic scalability of teams. And the thought is that work's happening all over the place, all over the time, and it's just happening. There isn't really a company, there aren't really teams. Um, Problems are defined on a real time basis. Planning is happening on a real time basis. Resources are being allocated on a real time basis. Customer discovery and validation is happening on a real time basis. Research is happening on a real time basis. And the work itself is also happening on a real time basis. So I don't know how far away this idea is because um, you kind of have to look at how work has been done from a traditional point of view. Um, and pretty much, I, I don't know, well, in the context of modern history, I think it started with the British India Company, that the notion of companies came into existence and business in a modern sense took effect. Um, and then we've kind of seen the evolution of that throughout the times. Some of the work has become standardized, which is kind of handled by um, the government or the municipality, and you kind of contract some of the work out, which is largely relegated to the building and maintenance and upkeep of civilization in a physical world, and also in a digital world increasingly. Um, and other than that, I mean, there's been innovation and work happening in pretty much all the industries, and largely, I would say, digital or technological work of a nature for the past, I don't know, for how long, but the pace in those realms is increasing. That's where a lot of growth is coming from, technology and increasingly products in the digital age. But the theme is consistent. You create companies, and then talent is accrued, capital is invested in order to be able to gain momentum, solve a problem, build a product or service, and kind of get the ball rolling from that point onwards. So the thing I am thinking of is what is beyond companies, and I I really don't know if it's one of those problems kind of makes your brain hurt. Um, but I keep coming back to this idea for some reason, thinking there's something here. I just haven't been able to figure out what exactly. I'm kind of tying it with some of the things I've been mapping for the past couple of years. I've kind of have a different definition of work. I have a different definition of innovation as well. I kind of call it true innovation, whereas some of the other people kind of call it genuine innovation. Um, but where I'm going with this is, I guess the most relevant example that I've kind of come across is I was reading this book called Creator's Code, written by a lady by the name of Amy Wilkinson. Um, and in this book, they kind of mentioned this one product called Source by a company called PhD Media. I think it's a company based out of, I think, hold on, do I have it here? I'm not sure. I think they're based out of Singapore. But basically, what they've done is they've taken the planning aspect of a business and they've kind of spread it out across the organization. So a large chunk of the planning aspect, I wouldn't want to put a percentage on it. It seemed like 90% or higher is kind of crowdsourced throughout the company. So everyone's kind of involved in the day to day and kind of overall planning of where the company is going by using one of their platforms or their product, which is called Source. So it's really interesting. There's a clip of their product in its kind of how the product works on YouTube. I'll plug this in, plug that a link to that video in this video here. But that's really the kind of model I'm thinking of. That's only for planning, but I'm thinking, there was, what if everything could be done on a platform like that? So you have all the things I mentioned before and maybe more, in terms of how work could be done in a near future case. Now, to get to such a model, you'd have to build other things on top of just the operating system itself. And it's all contingent on what is it that you want to reward, right? So, uh, rewarding the work itself is a given, unless you're working in an open society where everything's taken care of. You know, civilization has largely functioned in a sense where you um, allocate or give something in return for the work to be conducted. So we're not talking about that reality in this case, but um, other than the breakdown of the work itself and the for it to be provided from that context, with such a model, you could, if you chose to, reward things like ideation, generating insights, um, creativity, and I mean, there are ways to um, build that kind of those kind of qualities or function features actually within the product. Each one of these is a separate problem, sub problem by itself. But that's really the shell of an idea in my mind. The reason why I started thinking of this problem, there's a bunch of different reasons, and they kind of all converge towards something like this. So, I mean, there is a lot of work that needs to be done for taking civilization to the next level or next couple of levels, whatever those levels happen to be. Um, and there's a lot of work to be done in order to be able to not just um, provide the resources required for 9 billion people in a near future, well, in the next couple of decades, but also increase the quality of life for humans all over the world. And I think that is only possible with continued innovation across the board, across the domain, with increased level of productivity, greater yields to be found across the board, um, the works. And I kind of like sense that the corporate model right now is broken. Um, and there's a bunch of different reasons why I say why I say. I think corporations, like companies, start and they are um, they some companies are innovative, and I think so. I'm not going to say the ones that are innovative thrive or like survive. I think, but I'm not going to make that. But I think the ones that I think do not innovate, they find themselves getting replaced, um, or they become irrelevant at some point. Another thing I've kind of noticed is just kind of looking at the data. There's the website called AEI.org, and they've kind of shared some data on the cycles of creative destruction. So the companies that are kind of getting replaced by other companies, and it seems like for the past couple of decades that there was a time, I think during the 50s and the 60s, companies on average lasted 37 years. But over the course of the next couple of decades, that time frame has shrunk. Like an entire life cycle of a company may be over within a decade and a half. Um, and you kind of map that with things like how quickly companies are kind of going from uh, product launch to a billion users or an evaluation worth tens of billions. It's just things are expediting in that respect. But coming back to the point I was making, I think the larger a company becomes, irrespective of um, their overall life cycle and whatnot, I think the larger a company becomes, the more difficult for it is for it to innovate. And I think this is probably the most rare phenomena. Companies that master, that crack this code, they kind of go on to larger and bigger evaluations. I think there's only a few companies that come to my mind that have been able to do that, and I think Apple and Google would be, or Alphabet now, they would be within that category. As in, they have cracked that code that allows them to disrupt their own product cycles, and it's like they've kind of mastered the process of creative destruction. They are not waiting for somebody else to kind of come in and disrupt their product cycles. They're doing it themselves, and they're innovating in other areas. They're kind of going in areas where um, nobody else is even thinking of going potentially. So so I mean, a combination of these things is kind of what led me to think of such a scenario, and I think there is something here. I just don't know what. If anything, this could just form. These combination of ideas could form a basis for a kind of like a operating system of the future, um, from an enterprise point of view, um, and this would replace um, or lead a lot of different other platforms. It would push them to innovate um, what they do, because I'm kind of looking at these set of ideas for them to be designed, and by design, kind of reminds me of Steve Jobs' definition of design, not just how it looks and functions and how it makes the users feel, but how it works. So it's the design of this product will kind of push a lot of other platforms out there to integrate their features with these set of ideas, because uh, you would be able to find the right person for the task or the job every single time, with the guarantee, with some variable or percentage, that if they were chosen for that task or that job, then, or it could be an individual or a team, but if that was to be the case, then you would know what the output would be and the quality of the output by which time frame, and you'd be able to do that across the board. So when that happens, work gets like the progression of how work gets done is kind of you kind of fasten the cycle. So it's not. So again, it kind of goes back to what I started with in the very beginning. It's not that this needs to happen in order to be able to get this, and then kind of go from there. It's just happening. It's happening from day one, and I think this, if, I mean, there's a lot of ifs and there's a lot of problems to be solved here. It's again, it's a complex problem. Like I said, it's a kind of problem that makes your brain hurt. But if somehow it can be architected, then work will happen much quicker. Um, it's going to happen in a much more intelligent fashion. Again, where you wouldn't just be rewarding the work itself, you'd be rewarding a lot of other things. So the idea, or the series of ideas, are compatible with where we are going collectively as a species, which it seems like, based on a lot of data that's coming out, that we're heading towards a world of increased automation. Um, in my mind, I have a very different take on what's out there in the mainstream media, in terms of what's going to be the impact of automation on jobs, on other things. I I completely welcome this phenomena. Like I said, I've identified 18 areas, but I think that's just a start. That's just a fraction of. We haven't even discovered the possibilities that can be enabled with the rise of automation. Um, I think this is our destiny. Uh, there's like so many things to do, so many places to discover, and by the redefinition of work, we can do all of those things. We can be more creative. We can work on more ideas and test more ideas, and we can test more products and services. And I think, you know, keep like sorry. So coming back to where I was going with this, these set of ideas, I think, are compatible with the future in that respect, um, because not only would the subconstruct within if these set of ideas do materialize, but not only would um, the construct leverage things like crowdsourcing and kind of real-time scalability of teams, which is literally really crowdsourcing, where there's a bunch of different ways you can do that. Um, and not only would it reward much more than the work effort itself, which I think is a stupid design. Like right now, I think the way corporations are functioning or structured, we're kind of going in a different direction. But the way corporations are kind of defined, I think this is one of the reasons why they stopped kind of innovating the larger they become, and it's because people like the real definition of work becomes archaic and vague, and the vision becomes fragmented, and so is the effort. I think that's it in a nutshell. So kind of people come to work, they have their coffee and spend half an hour talking about stuff, but what amount of time are they really productive? Like, what amount of time are they really in that flow, in that moment, in that zone, where not only is work getting done, but the kind of work that's getting done is aligned with what the kind of work that needs to happen, the kind of work that leads to more innovation, more creative expression, more I don't know, breaking things, testing them out, testing different ideas. Um, so, I mean, coming back to where I was going, oops, my Fitbit just went off. Yeah, I think there's something here. You can again reward more than just the work effort itself. Um, the question is, how do you start it on a small scale? Can you start it on a small scale? I got to look at PhD Media and how they started. Um, but I kind of look at this as a combination of things like Odesk and Elance. They're really the same company now. So harnessing principles from that and kind of bringing it into the structure of a traditional organization. And then you have things like modules from things like Clarity.fm, where you can pick up like the right kind of expert any given time, and then you kind of have a core knowledge base in the middle, which everyone can tap into, or everyone within that organization at the very least. It's still an organization. You've just kind of, by virtue of this design, made it a bit more innovative, kind of like an organism versus a corporation, which I kind of view as boxes within a pyramidal structure. Um, so you're just kind of turning it into more of a living, breathing, well, not breathing, but more of a living system or an organism versus just a corporation. So this is pretty raw. I don't have any notes that I'm looking at. I kind of started with a blog post, but it was taking too long to just kind of document all my thoughts. So I've kind of this this is the first in a series of my documentation. Um, when it comes to my idea or a series of ideas about the scalability of teams.